Welcome back to the panel discussion, HR Modernization Strategies in Government, sponsored by Workday on Federal News Network. My guests today are Neil Singh, the Acting Executive Director for Human Capital Business Solutions at the Department of Homeland Security. We have Byron Atkins. He's the Director of the Interior Business Center at the Interior Department. We also have Tracy DiMartini. She's the Chief Human Capital Officer at the General Services Administration. Tanisha Lewis is the HCM Performance and Business Readiness Manager for the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. And of course, we have Wayne Bobby, the Vice President of U.S. Federal Government at Workday. And I'm your moderator, Nicola Grisco. So I heard, many of our panelists talk a lot about the need for self-services. Many of you already had HR self-services in place for employees. Neil mentioned the need or desire to build a employee portal. But I wonder, how has that need for employee self-services maybe evolved in this last year during the pandemic? You don't have employees physically there at the office to submit a form for a personnel change or something like that. So how has that changed for you all in the last year? Byron, would you like to get us started here?
Sure. We are actually in the process of making investment towards a self-service capability. We don't have it currently. Part of our information technology optimization program is where we are assessing all of our applications and IT programs that we have to look at where we can use technology and really move the services we provide into the 21st century. And that's based upon feedback we've gotten from our customers, particularly with folks being at home in the pandemic. What we're hearing is folks want the opportunity to have services and information 24/7. And we think the best way to achieve that would be with a self-service portal. But also, I think we also have a workforce that is really prepared and looking forward to having the opportunity to be able to service themselves. I think it's a different type of workforce. Workforce is evolving. And I think, as you know, being at home, you don't have the colleague to come by to say, hey, can you help me with this? Or the HR servicing specialist that's down the hall that you can ask a question. And so I think a lot of things within our customers, but also within our workforce, we've realized that folks want the capability and are capable of providing those self-services. And so we're not there yet, but that is part of our HR IT roadmap to get there, to where folks can have the opportunity to self-service and do some of those tier zero type of activities that really doesn't require a HR specialist to be a part of.
Tracy, you mentioned this need for self-services as well. So what are you seeing at GSA? What might be in the works there? Tell us a little bit more.
Sure. So what we're doing right now is my shop is coordinating with GSA's Office of Information Technology to bring in a ServiceNow platform that will allow our hiring managers in particular to track their job postings in real time. Because often we hear there's an air of mystery about how long it takes to get a job in federal government, but we're able to actually show, how long the process takes and also the volume of applications. That's one thing I will never get tired of talking about, because people think, that applications just go into an HR shop, never to be heard from again. But last year in GSA, we had about 1,300 jobs that we were posting for. And for that, we received over 66,000 applications. So you're hiring fewer than 2% of the people that apply. And it's good for our hiring managers to have that line of sight to see if you open a job government-wide, you may get fewer applications, but if it's in DC, you still may have to sort through hundreds and hundreds of applications to find the candidates that are best qualified. So we think just having some of that transparency will take away some of the questions that our customers have and allow them to be a greater part of the process. Again, a lot of this is going to be a culture change for agencies because they want HR shops to do most of the work, but at the same time, we're trying to really shift the conversation to a partnership and make sure they understand why they are an important part of all hiring decisions. So we're hoping the use of technology like ServiceNow and other platforms that are designed to provide those snapshots in real time. So the information is current and people know what the next steps are and where it is in the process, whether it be waiting to create a certificate or if someone is hanging out in a security background check, sometime we're not hearing from the applicants in a timely manner. So it reminds us to give them a nudge. We think that'll help bring the temperature down a bit and people will be a bit more understanding. I also, again, I think it helps put the focus back on HR as a professional operation. HR is a strategic business partner. It's not just creating SF52s and pushing things through the system. The process is so complex. There are so many codes. There are so many but what if scenarios when you're processing a person's application or a retirement action or maybe a leave issue. We need to have those conversations on an ongoing basis so we do it right the first time and we have better data. Because I think all of my colleagues on the phone would agree that's also a pain point. When you have the volume of paper that we have going through HR shops, data integrity and data quality is our number one concern. So the more we can have our customers be a part of that and make sure that they're entering things. I remember, Byron, when I worked at EEOC, we used IBC and you had to key in your own social security number, which is a brilliant idea because people should not make a mistake doing that. Spoiler alert, they totally do anyway, and you have to go back and fix it. But it puts the onus on them to do some of that work that an HR specialist might do and accidentally transpose given the volume they have. So again, there's a lot of cultural change that goes along with embracing technology, but I think it's the right time to do it.
Tracy, I wanted to jump on the hiring bit that you talked about and bringing more visibility to the process through data, which I think is a complaint that I'm sure many organizations have fielded over the years with applicants not knowing where they are in the process. Days have passed, weeks, maybe months have passed by since they've heard back from the agency and they don't know, where they are in the system. Can you maybe just describe a little bit more how you're going to use that data in that way to maybe bring more light onto the hiring process and what's working and not?
Sure. So the internal process using a platform like ServiceNow or other technologies will allow the hiring managers to see where we are in each phase. USA Jobs is designed to already do that. But again, it's a workload issue. So if I only have, for an agency the size of GSA, I have 12,000 employees. If I have roughly 80 staffing specialists and they do everything from soup to nuts, it's going to be a lower priority to go in and update every application status in USA Jobs, not because we don't think our applicants are important. They are, and we want them to have a good experience. But there's about 363 other things the specialist has to do. And the most important one in that scenario would be getting the hiring action complete. So I'm sure many of your listeners have had, and I've personally had this even as a Chico, where I apply for a job and a year later, I receive a notice from USA Jobs that gives me a status update. That is just because the volume of work never ends in an HR shop, and it still takes a human component to go in there and check the box that says job is closed, you were not selected. So those are things we're still looking at. And I do believe the Office of Personnel Management has done a great job with very few resources and very few IT investments given to them to try and make their platforms as user-friendly as possible, but we still have a long way to go.
Neil, I want to bring you in here. DHS, obviously, wide variety of positions, lots of different kinds of work duties and jobs and all of that. When it comes to the hiring question, maybe measuring how long it takes, how many applicants you're getting, what the process looks like. Where are you all in that space, and what are you seeing there?
Well, one of the first things we had to do, and I know we've talked a lot about these tools and automating processes, that before you can go in and automate a process, you've got to evaluate the process and make it efficient. And so we've started by coming up with target processes, streamlining, because again, if you just automate a process that's bad, you're just going to do bad stuff faster. So one of the first ones we started with was onboarding. We looked at areas where we could standardize across the department, because again, we have 10 different components that have 10 different missions. And some of them even have different methods of hiring, where they start with pools of employees that they can pull from as the opportunities open up. So we've done a lot in that area to allow us to track and measure the same way. Honestly, we haven't gotten there yet. And part of it is because we're still in the process of getting those standard onboarding processes implemented in the multiple staffing solutions that we have. And then once we get there, we'll be using data integration to pull all the information into we have a human capital enterprise information environment that we use for our reporting and analytics. And that way we can get and off of those standards and off of those workflows, we can start to get our time to hires and metrics around that.
Tanisha, I saw a couple of head nods and smiles from you. When it comes to hiring with your organization, I mean, where are you with this, and how are you using data perhaps to make this process simpler, faster, et cetera?
Well, let me just say that I've been in both Tracy and Neil's position. Prior to implementing Workday, we did fully manual processes for everything. We had something called a PE10, which was a dreadful form that managers had to fill out to fill a position. The application process was so long that we saw over 50% of our candidates dropping out of the process. And so once we, found Workday and all of its capabilities, it was like a whole new world for us. Similar to Neil, our organization prior to purchasing Workday sat down and said, look, we've got to look at these business processes and get a better understanding of the areas that we need to improve, or the areas where we're having redundancies or just inefficiencies. And so we did that and took a look at it. And then when we started entering the process with Workday, we had strong conversations with our teams about customization, making sure that our hiring process, regardless of the role that we're hiring for, whether it's a trades employee, accountant, or professional employee, that we are prepared with a business process that's efficient, streamlined, and that the application process is simple for the candidate. So once we implemented Workday, we were able to reduce the redundancies in our system and actually identify efficiencies with the Workday business practices. And so it's been a great help. I will say that after implementing Workday, we had a wealth of data and that we never had before. We had a system that was 13 years old that didn't work really well. It took us days to pull data. With Workday, you have real-time data. Immediately, our employees, our managers, our candidates can take a look at their hiring process and see where the applications are, whether they're in the background process or interview phase. Then our HR team can take that data and analyze and identify areas that we need to improve on. So we take a look at that data and say, hey, wait a minute, we're losing all of these candidates. Let's figure out why. Let's take a look at the job requirements, the qualifications, and make sure that we're not actually harming our candidates and eliminating candidates and ensuring that we have diversity in our candidate pools. So we take a look at all of that data, whether it's the experiences, the education, the backgrounds of our applicants, and we adjust our job postings to make sure that we have the candidate pool that we need to select from so that we can get the best candidate. So I would say that our hiring process at the moment actually went from almost 200 steps and is now down to 25 steps, all with data attached to each one of those business processes. Very valuable data that we use day to day to make decisions about our hiring process and the types of candidates that we're looking for. So now the future for us is integrating artificial intelligence in our hiring process to streamline it even further and to improve our selections. So I would say that, technology has made a huge impact and the Workday system has made a huge impact on how we select, recruit, and hire the best talent in the region.
So Wayne, Tanisha just said that, her organization has gotten more data than, she had previously because she's implemented these new systems. When you speak to your customers about their, digital transformation, essentially with hiring, I mean, have you heard from them that they're, are they able to draw on data, find data and use it in different ways than perhaps, they didn't expect? Wondering if you can talk about that a little bit.
No, we're seeing that a great deal, and I just want to pick up on something. It was a general theme that I heard from the panelists here is the federal government in terms of the hiring, and I look at some of the statistics which would tell us that less than 10% of the federal workforce is under 30 years old. So there's a major hiring effort going on right now to bring on the next generation, federal workforce. Going back to Tracy's point. I don't think we have a sourcing problem in terms of number of applicants. We have a quality of the applicant problem. So the systems today, and the data we're collecting is not to give us more candidates, but give us better candidates that are going to be a better fit in our organization, to use analytics, to use performance indicators, to use historical measures that we have about the people who joined our organization. What were the characteristics about those people? What caused them to stay in these organizations for a 20-year career, have a very successful career path as a part of that? These are the kind of individuals we want to be pursuing that are the best fits, who are the best fit in our organization. So I think some of these examples we just heard, and using Tanisha's point here at the end there, in terms of how can organizations like Workday provide people those types of machine learning, analytics, artificial intelligence, so you're not just sourcing more candidates, but you're sourcing better candidates, so we can make that HR person's job that much easier and more efficient as they staff for these positions going forward.
And if I could, Nicole, because
Sure.
that is such an excellent point that Wayne brought up, but I do think there's another component we need to look at, because you're absolutely right, Wayne. We don't need more candidates. We need candidates with the skill set for the federal government of the future. But we also need to take a realistic look at what federal hiring managers are competing with. And again, right now we are at a precipice where we can decide how to reform how the federal government works, where we work, where we hire candidates from, what flexibilities we give them in order to be more competitive. Because yes, the hiring process is definitely a pain point where we sometimes lose candidates. We also can't compete with salaries. We can't compete with certain flexibilities. And frankly, we can't compete with just keeping the workforce modernized or the workplace modernized and actually having the investments in the IT systems that people want and need to do their job more effectively and more efficiently. I think it's always so comical when we're called on the carpet as HR managers to say, why can't you do a better job recruiting candidates? Why can't you get more candidates coming to federal government? Well, since the first time we had sequestration in 2013, the average pay raise for the last 9 years has been 0.9%, with health costs skyrocketing beyond 36% usually. So we're not paying them what they deserve. We are not giving them the workforce flexibilities. It took a worldwide pandemic for some agencies to grasp the concept of telework. And we just aren't doing a good job staying competitive. Put all of that together with the fact that in 2021, we're sitting here having a discussion about investing in HR information technology systems, and it's no wonder we can't make any headway. It should be very much common sense to give the HR operations team the tools that they need and the investments they need. And oftentimes when you look at federal budgets, HR and IT are the first ones to get cut, and it just makes no sense.
So Tracy, I think that's a great point. We do have to take a quick break, but there's a lot to get into with future of work conversations, where you all are headed now that we've spent a year essentially working remotely. But we will take a short break. I'm your moderator, Nicola Grisco, for the panel discussion, HR Modernization Strategies in Government, sponsored by Workday on Federal News Network.